in there again so that we could resurrect that plan again. So this has been happening over and over again. And I'm sure you've had my colleague Alex Newman on your show. He's done a lot on the background of ISIS and ISIS, Al-Qaeda in Libya, in Yemen, and all throughout the Maghreb and the Middle East.
Yes, we've had him on about TPP, but I should get him back on about that because he's specifically broken it down for your excellent publication that folks can subscribe to or read the articles at thenewamerican.com. Shifting gears out of that, TPP, again, they've rammed it through the Senate, but now it's got to go to the House. We've got all these blackmail scandals firing up right now, I guess, to get the Republicans to get in line, it looks like. Do you want to cover the attempt to ram it through first or what's in it?
Well, we can try to do both, but I think it was the comment that you made right at the beginning about your son going out and asking people about it. That's been my experience, other than in select conservative and liberal/progressive leftist and environmental circles. Very few people have heard about the TPP or the TTIP. Just for, I know most of your listeners may know, but the TPP stands for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The TTIP stands for Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. These are the two mammoth so-called trade agreements. They're not even trade agreements, and we can get into some quotes on that. They admit, the public officials, the U.S. government officials, and the think tank gurus who help put them together, that these are not trade agreements. They are partnerships. They are economic and political convergence and integration schemes. That is, to these twin schemes for the Pacific, Trans-Pacific Oceanic area and the Transatlantic Oceanic area, are to bring together economically and politically, much in the same way that we've seen in the European Union, the economies and political systems of the United States and these other countries. With the TPP, we're talking about currently 12 countries: Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, the United States, and Vietnam, these Pacific Rim countries. Well, the TPP is just a transition stage to what they have planned further, which is called the Free Trade Area of the Asia Pacific, which will be made even larger. So that's the scope of the TPP. The TTIP, of course, would combine us, the United States, and eventually Canada, Mexico, and North America.
William, we've got to go to break. William F. Jasper, thenewamericanmagazine.com is our guest. We'll come back and let you go through the trilateral plan, the three global super regions now being merged together with these agreements, the Atlantic and the Pacific. We'll even pull up a clip of Bush talking about it 8 years ago and admitting it. So all that's coming up with William F. Jasper. I'm going to call Joe and say, do you want to go? Because he was on the East Coast covering the police verdicts, and he was already gone. He was already on his way there. So tonight, 7 o'clock Central, we'll go into overdrive tonight, so he's live there. That'll be about 8 o'clock Central. So a big extended live show tonight. There'll be some tape segments as well. PrisonPlanet.tv. This is a short segment, long segment coming up. William F. Jasper, The New American Magazine. He's the editor. He joins us right now. William, you got cut off on the break. You were getting into the Atlantic Treaty and then the TPP, both that then take the three larger unions and start harmonizing them. I mean, this is the plan that Barry Goldwater warned up in the 60s and 70s. Here it is. And whereas you can't get the public to get upset about being conquered by corporate chieftains, they do seem to get, hey, why can't we see the plan? Why is it so secret? I mean, it's so classically totalitarian.
Well, yes, and that's one of the areas where we've been able to get some traction on, because it is so blatantly obvious and audacious that they would be carrying out these negotiations in secret, completely off the record, off the books, except for those privileged, cleared participants, private parties, lobbyists, representatives of some of the biggest corporate interests in Wall Street, who are allowed to not only have access to these documents, which have been underway for several years now, but our legislators, whom we've elected, are not allowed to have access to them, except in very controlled, restricted conditions. You and I are not allowed to have any access to them other than those copies that have been leaked to the public illegally. So you and I have to rely on illegal copies or references to them made by the U.S. Trade Representative.
And isn't that justice inverted, where we're criminal if we're looking at WikiLeaks stuff, when our government's being taken over, we're being taken over in secret? I mean, that's just asinine that they would even try this.
Well, and I'm still waiting for some senator or congressman to take advantage of being able to go down to the secret room in the bottom of the Capitol where they have to surrender their cell phone and all other communications devices, and then go into a special room. They then are monitored. They may not take any...
Who makes that rule? See how we're already these kept creatures? Who said it's secret?
I'm still waiting for one of these congressmen to say, well, go ahead and arrest me. What are you going to do? I would like for one of them to do that. Get arrested for trying to represent the people and tell them what it is you're going to be subjected to.
You know, you're a real expert on this. I've tried to understand it. They've been developing this treaty, as you know, for 10 years. How did they get it to the point where Congress is convinced they can only go look at it in secret and can't tell anybody? I mean, we're already run by these foreign groups?
Right. They can only do this, Alex, because they have gained control. The globalists, the one worlders, have gained control at the top of both parties, the leadership of both the Republicans and the Democrats. And I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new there. But, I mean, this is the strange world that we are in now, where we have the top leadership, Hatch and McConnell and Ryan and the others in the House and the Senate, Republicans, conniving with the Obama administration and John Kerry to pull this over on the American people, together with the help of virtually all of the aligned globalist corporations that are in the Council on Foreign Relations, the U.S. Business Council, the Global Business Dialogue, the Transatlantic Policy Network, and others of these globalist business alliances. And so they have a tremendous amount of clout there, because we've allowed government to get so big that it now has all these goodies and benefits to hand out, and it has all these clubs to hammer people into submission. So we have today the Republicans jumping on board with this and convincing many of the conservatives that, hey, this is the thing to do, that this is going to help business, and trying to convince the American conservatives that because it's benefiting these huge corporations, Goldman Sachs, etc.
Stay there. Come back. We got to go to break. Come back, because that's how they're pitching it. Well, global government's there, so we better go ahead and just join it so we have our say. That's the trap. And then how do we beat it? Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones. William F. Jasper is our guest. We're on. Wake my dad up in the 60s and his friends, and then I kind of had that in the background when I was a child, even though my dad wasn't really heavily involved in any of that when he was older. Helped me see the world and wake up and do what I've done haphazardly for 20 years, and I've reached exponentially more. Think how many people we've reached that are going to end up having a big effect. So the globalists are racing all this through because they know a lot of forces are piling up against them. That's my view. We'll see if William F. Jasper agrees with that. But he got cut off by the break getting into, will they be able to pass it? Or even if they can't pass it, will they just have presidents and prime ministers by executive action implement it? Because their argument is, hey, these treaties are done. We have to do it. As Henry Kissinger wrote a month ago, George Soros wrote 2 weeks ago in these op-ed pieces that we covered. We're not joining globalism enough. Larry Summers did as well. All the usual suspects that maneuvered us into this crisis. Their answer is, hey, you're losing at the gambling table, double down. Or, hey, the heroin didn't get you high, take more. Because they're managing it and getting the power out of it. They are the villains. You've got George Herbert Walker Bush, all these usual suspects talking about their new world order. We see what it means. And then the very 1/10 of 1% that engineer the destruction of free market and all these poor indigent people then invoke race war and class war as a clash of civilizations to get us all fighting with each other while they rob us. So I want to get into TPP, where it's going, how they're pushing, we've got to join it to stay relevant. And then I want to get into social engineering that William F. Jasper, as a child psychology and degree, an education from University of Idaho, as well as other letters, with his understanding of all this, because he writes a lot about it, where the social engineering aspect is going and what type of world they're going to build if they're successful. So William F. Jasper, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Well, thank you, Alex. We were talking about what was happening with the TPP, how they were getting it through Congress. And, you know, with these business alliances, such as the Business Roundtable and the Transatlantic Partnership, the Transatlantic Policy Network, etc., they have put together a huge lobbying force of corporate power, and they are able to swamp just about any of the congressional districts or senators' states with the lobbying force that they can bring to bear there, and they can promise them, as many of the previous senators and congressmen have found, that once they leave office, they will have a very lucrative career with one of these corporations or with one of the think tanks or one of these coalitions. So there's a big incentive there when we have all of this at stake for these congressmen to completely consciously sell out or to just simply deaden the conscience that they have there and pretend that there is no real threat here. Because what we're talking about, as I've tried to make clear in my writings, is an existential threat. An existential threat to our sovereignty, our independence, to our Constitution, to our liberty. We saw very good premonition of that, really concrete proof of that a couple of weeks ago with the May 18th ruling by the World Trade Organization against the United States, against a law passed here by our Congress, the Country of Origin Labeling, COOL, which is simply stated foreign meat products have to be labeled as foreign meat when they come into this country, so that Americans can decide, okay, I'd rather have American meat, which already has enough concerns for most of us, or I can buy it from Mexico. Well, let me throw the cat out here.
Again, William F. Jasper, the editor of the New American Magazine, is our guest, breaking down global government, how unelected corporate bodies that are secret are now making decisions and basically trying to veto our laws. Please continue. Sorry about that.
So we see that they are actually moving to give the World Trade Organization authority, or rather our Congress is willing to now knuckle under to the World Trade Organization as a response to the World Trade Organization's ruling. Congress didn't say, well, go take a flying leap, try to enforce it. No, immediately the next day, the House Agriculture Committee got together and said, oh, I guess we have to change our law. There's nothing we can do about it. So they already introduced legislation with 60-some sponsors to cave into the WTO, which was a lawsuit brought to the WTO by another free trade agreement, so-called NAFTA, by Canada and Mexico. They used NAFTA to claim that simply us labeling